Donald Trump names Tom Homan border czar. And ooh, it is just stirring up emotions and getting people all riled up over this former ICE director looking to be very, 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 very tough on illegal immigrants in the country. We're going to get into it. Time to Talk podcast. Let's get right to it. Immigration. This new guy, Tom Homan. I think I just want to start off a couple things. The discussion on immigration, illegal immigrants, is I think there was a point in time where you couldn't even talk about illegal immigrants without sounding as if, somehow it became a racial conversation or xenophobic, right? You were xenophobic or racist or both in having that conversation. I think that over the last 4 years or 10 years, or specifically during the Biden administration, and the Harris failure at the border, which again is one of the major reasons why the Democrats lost this election. It's become an issue that as Americans, whether you're Latino, Black, white, Asian, whatever you are, I think we can all agree that the crisis here with illegal immigrants and Venezuelan gangs and all sorts of it's just a safety thing. It's a national security and a safety thing. You can't make this about not liking immigration or legal immigrants and how our whole country is founded on immigrants, right? Some of us didn't choose to come here, though. Some of us were dragged here in chains, but that's another conversation. But the point I'm making is this is a discussion that people get so riled up over. I think what it comes down to is how the discussion is had, right? Even with Trump, as crazy as he is, right? The thing about him that makes him so despised by so many and what makes him easily a target for critique, especially when it comes to his character, his overall demeanor, the way he treats people, is the conversations he has and the way he says things. It's not so much that there aren't principles or things that he's trying to address or certain policies or certain issues that he's trying to pay attention to and he's trying to put forth certain things on his agenda. It's not that some of them are bad. It's the way he describes them. He's incredibly insensitive. Now that brings me to Tom Homan. If you watch that 60 Minutes interview with Tom Homan or the heated exchange he had with AOC, you're listening to a guy who's just like no holds barred. He's not trying to bite his tongue. He's not trying to sound like he's, not mildly racist or xenophobic. And I'm not saying he is, right? That's my original point. He's just a guy who's just a hard ass when it comes to no, you cannot have gangs and criminals and people doing it. We're in a really bad situation and we have to do something about it. And we do. Let's just face it. But it's the way he talks that's off-putting, that makes people feel as if this is just a angry white man who's part of the Trump administration now, who's part of the whole Trump ideology and this whole thing that might essentially, be racist or have a certain agenda against people of color. And I honestly, I'm not going to sit here and say that none of that exists. I'm just telling you that if we look at Tom Homan and the way he described what he's going to do and how he wants to handle the situation, it is what it is. I mean, you look back to that J.D. Vance interview on, I believe it was ABC News, and he was talking with someone on ABC News, and they were saying, well, it's only a couple of buildings that were taken over by gangs. And he had to make the point. He laughed and made the point, do you hear yourself? Only a couple of buildings taken over by Venezuelan gangs, people who live in buildings being thrown out by Venezuelan gangs. That's if anyone saw New Jack City, when the Carter building was taken over at gunpoint by Nino Brown and the Cash Money brothers. Really? A few buildings were taken over? If that was your town, you wouldn't give a damn if they were black. You could be a black man. If a whole black gang rolled up on a building and tried to take it over, you would not want them there. If they were illegally here and there were gangs and they were threatening your family, threatening your life, threatening your livelihood, threatening anything, your children, you would be like, okay, I don't care where you're from. I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care. You don't belong here. You're not supposed to be here. And you're now threatening me and threatening my life, right? So that's what this whole thing really comes down to. It comes down to the obvious amount of criminals, illegal immigrants that are actually here, and something has got to be done to deal with them. I just think that what makes this really sensitive conversation is the way people discuss it. I think that's what it really is. Because I think if you have a rational discussion with your average neighbor, talk to anyone about this and just give them hypotheticals. What would you do if, a gang moved into your neighborhood and were threatening your children? What would you do if a gang moved into your neighborhood and they were giving money? They were actually being given money and being funded and were given housing in your neighborhood. And at the same point, they were robbing their own people and robbing people of the community and doing all sorts of stuff, right? Or again, going back to the building, what would you do if someone came and a gang of immigrants, illegal immigrants, came to your building and were threatening your home? How would you feel? What do you think you should do? Have a nice conversation about it? How would you deal with that? Would you say, oh, well, it's my brown brother, so I have to, I don't want to be racist and I don't want to be xenophobic, got to welcome the immigrants. It's America. Would you say that? You wouldn't say that. Exercise some common sense. I think these conversations sometimes, what happens is the fundamental logic of the conversation gets lost when we see an angry white man discussing the same solutions, right? Think of it this way. If the border czar had been black, well, border czar was previously black, but she didn't have any policies and she did nothing. But let's just imagine that Trump had appointed a black border czar and he spoke differently, or a Latino border czar and spoke a little softer than this white guy. We would be looking at the situation a little bit differently, wouldn't we? Let's just be honest. We would look at it different. It's because it's this angry older white gentleman that is spewing some sort of what people would consider hatred or some sort of, vile solutions for how he's going to deal with people of color that don't belong. That's what we're seeing. We're not seeing a solutions-based, guy who's just kind of hard when it comes to dealing with things. Anyway, I want to talk about this because, I saw some of those interviews and I'm hearing all this stuff about it. And I think what's more important to discuss is how do we discuss situations? How do we take information depending on where it's coming from and how they're actually saying it? I will close by saying I don't necessarily feel, in other words, I'm not justifying him speaking like that, or Trump when he speaks the way he speaks, or several people with agendas and who, especially when it comes to white men having a certain conversation that where a certain amount of sensitivity should be had, and they talk in ways that can be off-putting to people, especially people they're trying to reach. I'm not calling them all racist. I'm not saying I'm not with that whole thing where it's like every white man has got white privilege and he's a racist and he's the problem. I don't agree with that. I never agree with that. I don't think that was productive whatsoever. However, I think that it comes down to tone sometimes. How are you saying things? How are you talking to people? That's the important part. But as far as this immigration thing goes, again, this is on Trump's Agenda 47. I did a video on that yesterday where we talked about Trump's, these two of the actual policies in Agenda 47, one of them being the free speech one, which again, it's part of the platform that he put out in 2023, which I 100% agree with when it comes to free speech and taking back, our First Amendment rights and getting rid of the corporations and the Democrats in our business. I agree with a few things in there. There are going to be things that we all disagree with, but there's a lot of things that fundamentally we need to look at and analyze and not just assume because it's, they call him Hitler. They call him this. Oh, it's this white guy who's racist. We got to get past that. I hope everyone is well. I special shout out to my sisters. I'm going to do a special shout out every day to all my sisters out there who are still grieving over the loss of Harris. I hope you are not disowning your family, disowning your friends, blocking people, long-term friends, long-term family members and loved ones. I hope that you are exercising some rationale and thinking about what happened, why it happened, and what we can do to heal as a nation. That would be the better thing. Instead of blaming men, blaming us black men, and blaming Latino men, and blaming anyone else you can blame. So I say that with love to all of y'all, and I hope everyone is well. Anyway, Time to Talk podcast. Subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. We are going to just keep growing and keep growing and keep going. It's going to get better and better and better and better and better. Hit the notification bell. on the way out. Also, that way you know when I put up new content. And please hit that like button if you like this. And then below in the comments, let me think what you think about this guy, Tom Bowman, and the whole, border czar thing and where this is all going to go. All right, I'll see you on the next Time to Talk podcast. Peace.